Good evening. It's 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, January 15th, 2025, and this is the regular meeting of the Sandpoint City Council. It's now called to order in the council chambers at 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Mayor Jeremy Grimm presiding. Also present are Council President Deb Rule, Councilors Joe Espiro, Justin Dick, Kyle Schreiber, Pam Duquette, and Rick Howarth. Under the city's adopted code of ethics and civility, as the presiding officer, I'm to identify the law enforcement personnel serving as Sergeant of Arms for this evening's meeting. Tonight, we have Police Chief Corey Kuhn in the back. If everyone would please rise, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, moving on to announcements and reports, I will call up our department heads and ask for some brief announcements and reports if there are any department heads who have anything to report. With that, Cheryl, Central Services Director.
Good evening. In Central Services, just a couple updates for you. Our city clerk / risk manager, Melissa Ward, has been working a lot on developing a full safety program and culture that'll be throughout the organization. So there will be trainings and programs and one of the areas that she is coordinating right now is Safety Fest of the Great Northwest. It is put on by State Insurance Fund as well as NIC, and it's going to be held in Post Falls at the end of February. And she's coordinating with staff across all departments to attend, and it's completely free to the city. So it's just going to be another tool in developing that program, which is it's a program that we definitely need to get up and going, and everybody's been on board, and so it's had great feedback so far. Also, we're going to be working on a senior center lease. They currently have one. We will be probably developing a fresh lease because the lease in place is so many years old that we'll just develop a new one. With pretty much the same existing terms, and that'll be brought forward to you. Their current lease expires end of April. So my plan is to have a new one, March at the latest for review and approval. And then on the IT front, IT has been really busy building out servers for the SCADA project, and that's been a pretty significant undertaking to develop or build out those servers. So they've been working hard at that, but it's essential for the SCADA project to come to fruition and completed. And as far as that's all I have for updates for Central Services. If anybody has any questions for my department.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl, can you just give us the council, I'm informed, but just a brief update on the job survey and what's happening on that and likely timeframes?
So the job survey study is in full swing. All employees have filled out a job analysis questionnaire that is being finalized by all department heads, will be sent to the consultant by the end of the week or maybe mid next week. Interviews have begun getting scheduled with the employees, and if there are several employees under the same classification position, then it's considered a group interview, and they will all participate as a group. All positions where there's just one of, like, say, myself, then it's a one-on-one interview with the consultant, and they have four interviewers that are various experts in different areas within the organization. So it's not just one, it depends. I know for police, it's a police chief that's that's going to be conducting the interviews. And so they bring in experts to conduct those so that, let's see, and the timeline, those interviews should be completed by the first week of February. And then the initial reports will start coming in the 1st of March is the anticipated schedule that we'll start getting our initial reports, recommendations to look through what they've evaluated. So March it's supposed to be completed by end of March. We all stay on track.
And super high level, can you just brief the council on the GPS trackers? I know we don't have the contract and everything, but just the goal and where we're going with that.
So the goal is that we are going to be putting a GPS device into every city vehicle, including equipment, heavy equipment. This is nothing new for Sandpoint. This is pretty much best practice anywhere you go. And so we've already identified the vendor we'd be using, which is the same one that police uses in theirs. And right now we are just getting the list of all of the vehicles and equipment so that we can proceed forward and get that in place. But they will be basically plug-in type devices that go into the vehicles. And that'll be extremely beneficial for liability purposes, so that we can show where a vehicle was or a piece of equipment. And if somebody calls and the snowplow hit their car, we can actually track to see where that snowplow was and if that was possible. So it's very helpful on the liability end for the city.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any questions for Central Service Director Hughes?
I'm not sure if it's a question for you or for Jason about the pay for the lifeguards. Is that a you thing?
It's a blend.
Depends, it's a blend, depends on
Yeah.
the question.
I'm wondering where you came up with 1450.
So the 1450 is historical knowledge, and that's what I have to go off of like right now. That's what the pay has been. However, we have been doing benchmarking, reaching out, finding what the average is, and it's coming back between 14 and 16, with the average being 1450.
Doesn't seem like very much money for that responsibility, I guess. I know my granddaughter took a job at the drugstore for 1450 and no responsibility. I'm just afraid we're not gonna attract anybody to fill those positions, which would make the whole project moot.
I think the plan on that, because Kyle reached out and he did a statewide analysis on lifeguards in municipalities. So not your private clubs, like the YMCA, it's not a municipality. So, but he reached out and he got the rates from all these different agencies, and the median statewide was the 1450. I think historically it was 14, I want to say. But my understanding is based on response, we might have to reevaluate, but that would also be an evaluation of the budget as well.
Okay, and then are we just looking on, just advertising on our website, or are you advertising elsewhere?
So Kyle puts all recruitments on our website, which goes through government jobs. He also puts them on Indeed, and I'm sure that he also has put this one on the state.
Okay, that's what I was
If
wondering.
he hasn't yet, he does that last, where he puts it on the state website as well.
Okay, I'm wondering too about the high school, like the swim team, if some of those kids might be interested.
Jason can probably update you when he
Okay.
gets his update on
I'll
that.
wait for Jason.
Yeah, so it's a tag
thanks.
team question.
Any other questions for Director Hughes? Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Who's next? Chief, Jason, Holly? Police Chief Corey Kuhn.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a couple of quick updates. I threw the some stats at you guys earlier this week. Not sure if you had a chance to look at them. Trying to get back in a routine for me, keeping the council apprised of some of the stuff that's happening. So there's roughly 1,300 calls and some change. We're down just a little bit. Easy to see that a big factor on that is seasonal type calls. We've had a fantastic winter. No snow down below, tons of snow up top. I've absolutely enjoyed it. I don't know about anybody else, but I tease everybody, I haven't put my snowblower on my tractor and I'm not going to because that's what is keeping the snow away. So, but with that means abandoned vehicles, snow removal, all those calls for service that we normally do this time of the year haven't been an issue. So you see a little bit of drop because of that, which is good, but everything else is running pretty steady. We finally got the contract approved and adopted with North Idaho Animal Hospital. So the question has been is who are we using for our backup plan for our animal control issues that we're having outside of just us taking care of them? So that all the agreements are signed. We're partnering with North Idaho Animal Shelter for them to help house dogs that we can't get them back to their owners right away. Over the last couple of months, it's worked out fantastic. We've had people who have found dogs for us. We've been able to go out, scan them, locate owners, get them back to the owners. In those cases where we can't find an owner right away, those people who have found the dog have been willing to hold on to them for a day or two. And we've been really successful in getting those dogs back to the owners. I do know the shelter is still taking some on a case-by-case basis, so that's still a benefit. But for us in our program, it's working as designed, which is good. The other just tidbit of information, if you don't have any kids in the high school or middle school, the Sandpoint Police Department still works with the school district on doing lockdown drills and training. So this morning, if you're unaware, we did a lockdown drill this morning where they put the kids into lockdown. Law enforcement comes by, they knock on the doors, they open the classrooms, they kind of go through that process and how that works. And so we continue to educate and train and look to ways to improve in our safety in our school systems. So just a few things that's happened in the last couple of weeks. Questions?
Chief, can you, in light of the snow and lack thereof down here, can you just briefly summarize how we're handling the odd even parking for people? It's, I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're not doing anything right now.
Yeah,
And
so-
from the enforcement side of it, I've been asked that questions recently. From the enforcement side of it, we're not enforcing it. We started off with a bunch of warnings. We were really amped up and waiting for the snow to come. Every time it started to snow, we'd go out and give some more warnings. But until the snow plows actually start rolling out and plowing, there isn't an enforcement that takes place because of that happy balance that we have to do. So fortunate for this year, we've seen a bunch of vehicles still parked on the outside. We haven't been enforcing it because there hasn't been a need. So there's some balance in that enforcement side of it.
Yeah, so the public should just be aware that if and when the snow starts flying, that will be enforced.
Yeah, but if unfortunately we do get that last minute dump, and that would go back and enforce.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for the police chief? Thanks so much, chief. Be safe out there. Holly Ellis, Public Works Director, is on her way up.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Quick update from Public Works. Our utilities and street crews are staying busy while there's not snow on the ground. It's been a bit warmer and we've had a lot of rain. So we're actually seeing a lot of failed utilities and sinkholes. So our crews have been out responding to those. From the project front, our lift station project that's happening down at City Beach is going well, on schedule. Our Bridge Street Rehab Pier project is also going well. They're on schedule. They're about 50% of the way there. They've had some challenges with the Corps raising the Sand Creek levels. But we're working closely with that contract to keep that project going, and they'll be working in the water. So those are our projects that we're working on now. And just a heads up, February is going to be a big month for Public Works. We'll be bringing to you our plan to repave the downtown parking lot and a plan for downtown revitalization before we get an engineer engaged We just want to present the concepts to council that are in our multimodal and downtown design comp plan to make sure that we're all in alignment moving forward before we engage an engineer.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly. Any questions for Holly?
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Chief Gilchrist, Fire Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. How's everybody doing? Happy New Year. We didn't really do this last week, but just a couple updates from the fire department side. Pretty exciting part of the year. We're discontinuing our old record management system and moving to a new platform. So our conversion is taking place this month. Just kind of working with the vendors and getting all of our information moved over to the new platform. So that's pretty exciting. And it kind of helps us out with what we call an ISO inspection for the Idaho State Insurance Rating Board. They give us our classification for a fire rating on how we're doing. So been in touch with those folks, and we look like we're setting it up for next spring, which is good. So that's going to be a big, it's kind of a big deal for us this year. We haven't had one since 2018, I think was our last one. So yeah, we're really excited about that. And the last thing, just an update on our compliance engine, where we're talking about our fire suppression systems throughout the city and having those inspected. Of the ones that have been inspected so far over the last 6 months, we're almost at 80% compliance, which is outstanding. Those that haven't been in compliance have been getting letters from us, and it just kind of helps remind them what they need to get fixed on their systems so that they remain compliant with the fire code. Other than that, it's all we really got going on right now in fire, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Any
it.
questions for the chief?
Good to go. All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chief. Planning and Community Development Director, Jason Welker.
Good evening, Council. I actually have quite a lot of updates for you tonight. There's been a ton going on in the CPD department. The last time we met was 3 weeks ago, and you guys approved 2 grant applications. I just wanted to give you an update on those. The Recreational Vehicle Fund and the Waterways Improvement Fund grants have been drafted, and they have been presented to the Parks Commission as of this afternoon. They've also been shared with the grant committees, or at least the committee chair for the Waterways Improvement Fund Commission and the grant administrator down at the Department of Parks and Recreation in Boise. So I'm getting feedback from all of these groups to improve those grant applications. They are due 2 weeks from Friday. We are asking for about $1.6 million between those 2 grants for improvements at City Beach. I just want to highlight the approach we're taking to planning those improvements. And basically, we're going back to the basics. We're going back to the 2010 Parks Master Plan, which does include the following as goals identified for needed improvements to City Beach. And just listen to these and tell me if any of these have been done since 2010. Plant low input vegetation plantings that will increase shade cover over parking lot by 2015. Create a City Beach stormwater plan for parking area by 2015. Replace parking lot lights with energy efficient bulbs and fixtures by 2018. Replace the boat ramp behind the beach shop. Improve signage to City Beach. Repave and restripe parking lot by 2015. It's 2025 and none of those things have been done. So we are looking to actually do some of the long deferred improvements to City Beach, particularly to the hardscaping there, improve the stormwater treatment, improve energy efficient lighting, do landscaping and shade trees. This is going to be a multi-year project. This year's WIF grant won't come close to paying for all of that work, but the WIF committee recommends multi-year projects. It's how we got the Memorial Field boat launch improvements and parking lot improvements that we saw wrapped up about 4 years ago, which are basically like the benchmark we're trying to go for. The stormwater retention system at Memorial Field treats all the stormwater from Ontario and is actually the best example of stormwater treatment that we have in Sandpoint, according to our engineer. So we'd love to replicate something like that at City Beach to make sure that that park, that water remains sustainable for generations to come. I learned from our parks, if you guys don't know Austin Hull, I recommend you have a coffee with him sometime. He's worked for the Parks Department for 28 years. The Parks Department didn't exist before 1986 when City Beach Park was handed over by the Lions Club to the city for maintenance. That's when we created a Parks Department. That parking lot has not been resurfaced in that time. He also told me that if you go down there today, one of the lamp posts, you can see a saw cut that is cut halfway through the cedar post that holds up the lamp. And that was one of his high school classmates in the 1970s who attempted to cut down one of those lamp posts. That lamp post has not been repaired since that sawing attempt occurred 50 years ago. So in our department's opinion and in the Parks Commission's opinion, it's time to address some of these deficiencies. So the Parks Commission recommends today that my team commits roughly half of our fiscal year 26 Parks capital improvement budget towards matching funds for these two grants. That's going to be around $150,000. $100,000 towards the WIF grant, $50,000 towards the RV park grant. If those grants are awarded, we will have leveraged that $150,000 10x to achieve over a $1.5 million budget for improvements at City Beach in fiscal year 26. If we aren't awarded these grants, we'll have our $300,000 Parks capital improvement budget. We'll go back to the Parks Commission and say, what projects can we do with $300,000 to maintain or improve our existing parks? So this is a gamble. If we get the grants, we're going to be in a position to do something huge at City Beach. If we don't get the grants, we'll be, looking at our Parks capital improvement plan and working with the Parks Commission to identify some much smaller scale projects in our city parks. The key to all of these proposed improvements is the need for sustainable mechanism for maintaining these infrastructure facilities into the future. Currently, as you're aware, 100% of our budget for parks maintenance and improvement comes from city boat slip moorage fees, RV campground users, and facility rental fees at Memorial Field, Travers Park, and now the James E. Russell Sports Center. We are talking about, the mayor has mentioned it, rolling out a paid parking policy in Sandpoint. This is something that I've been tasked with. This has been presented to the Parks Commission. It's going to the Planning and Zoning Commission on Monday, then back to the Parks Commission and to the Ped Bike Committee. And we're going to be running this through several rounds of public engagement to get feedback and improve that before it comes to you, maybe sometime in February. So stay tuned. It's out there. Joel, we missed you today. Would have loved you to have you at the Parks Commission meeting. Let's see. I just want to point out the goals of any proposal that comes to this council for consideration will be to better manage the demand for downtown parking, to improve access and convenience for local and area residents during peak months, and to assure a sustainable funding mechanism for parking facility maintenance and improvements into the future. Just to put that on your radar. Okay, I've got some updates from the planning world. I kind of wanted to just give you some highlights of the multifamily development that's happening in Sandpoint. Right now in our pipeline, we have building permits about to be issued for the 76-unit tribute apartment development north of Super One. We have just issued certificate of occupancy for 36 multifamily units on Highway 2 at the Homestead Division. And we expect building permit applications to come in for another 6 units there with another 6 buildings with about 90 or 100 more apartment units. We have 135 multifamily unit on Samuelson, west of the fairgrounds. That's going to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission probably in March. That's a really nice apartment project they're working on there. And we've recently had some pre-op meetings with developers interested in doing workforce housing projects to stand to provide dozens of workforce housing units close to downtown as well. So there's a lot in the pipeline. We expect about 400 multifamily dwelling units to come online in the next 2 years based on what we see in the pipeline right now. So really exciting times for, I'm not going to call it affordable housing, but more affordable housing than what perhaps this market has seen in decades. The site plan review permit for Project Bulldog, which is the distribution center warehouse on Great Northern and Woodland, has been approved, and we expect the building permits for that project to go out in the next week or so. So don't be surprised if before I see you guys again in 3 weeks, you've seen bulldozers out there. That project's moving quickly. They expect to have that online by summer. And that is a distribution center and warehouse. I think there's been a lot of talk about that in the community. So just keep your eyes open on that project's going forward. Okay, I asked Daniel, our sports facility supervisor, to provide you with his 1 month update. We've been open actually for 5 weeks now at the Sports Center, Travers Park. And here are some of the highlights for you. In that time, the facility has brought in $24,786 of revenue. That's from memberships and daily user fees. And the payroll expenses have approached $19,337. And there are lots of other expenses that don't really reflect what the monthly operating costs are going to be going forward, because we've spent thousands of dollars on just equipping that facility in the first 6 weeks. So we're looking at roughly a break-even level of operations and expenses right now after 1 month, if you take into account things like the electricity bill, which, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 a month. So we are optimistic that we're going to be able to remain open at least the 6 days a week that we've been open right now. Daniel is interviewing 2 more candidates for facility services representative. That's the front desk job title. We currently have a total of 6 part-time staff working an average of 12.75 hours per week. During peak times, we need a minimum of 2 staff. Those peak times are proving to be Saturdays all day. And then during the pickleball group sessions, there are 30 to 40 people on average. And during community court time, we are seeing every court packed. Those are the free community users who are coming in to play for free. $5 for non-city residents, and demand is just overwhelming during those times. There are usually people waiting in the lobby. So just this week, we're going to a 2-hour community court time on Fridays to try to encourage people to kind of cycle out and let those who are waiting to come on and play. So it's really great that we have this free community time, and demand is proving to be really high during those times. The playground is completely open at this point. The splash pad has been poured. Of course, it's not open yet, but it will be completed in May, May, and the splash pad will be turned on when the weather warms up in the spring. Another update on the sports center. The curtains that form the walking aisles will be installed on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. And once those are installed, we're immediately going to be open for about 10 hours a day of free public walking. No membership. Just come in, go for a walk. It's about 64 degrees in there at all times. It's like a warm, spring day. So we encourage members of the public starting next Thursday to come out and go for free walks around the sports center. You don't have to worry about getting hit in the head with a pickleball or a tennis ball once those curtains are installed. What else? We've had a lot of requests for facility use from more than just the tennis and pickleball community. Trout Unlimited came to us and wanted to know if they could do fly casting lessons in there. So Daniel and Katie are working with the local fly fishing chapter to do 4 weeks of fly fishing instruction between the community room. They're going to have 3 courts reserved. They'll have 12 people at a time out there learning how to cast fly lines on the sports court. Sandpoint Lacrosse reached out. They want to have indoor practice starting February 1st. So they're going to be using 2, 3, or 4 courts. We're going to meet with them next week and see what their needs are, but they're going to be doing indoor lacrosse practice in there. Little League Baseball wanted a place to do spring tryouts. We offered the sports center. They chose the fairgrounds because the fairgrounds going to allow them to do live batting practice. I guess the fairgrounds doesn't have the same concern about their light fixtures in the ceiling as we do. So we can't accommodate the Little League Baseball team right now, but we offered it to them. They were very interested, but ultimately they wanted somewhere where they could hit balls. And we just can't allow that inside right now because we have probably $50,000 worth of lights hanging from the ceilings. Okay. Winter break camp took place there. We had about 6 days of our kids program. They used the community rooms. They used the new playground. They used the courts. It's going really well. The facility's being used. We won't know for about 6 months the financial situation as a whole, but we're optimistic based on the first month that we should be able to continue to cover our operating costs. I will address Pam's questions about lifeguards here. We've actually had 2 interested candidates so far in the first couple of weeks since we posted the job. As Cheryl said, the pay has been benchmarked at $14.50. We're hopeful that we can get 12 candidates by March. If we can get 12 candidates by March, we've got a fully staffed lifeguard program that would allow us to operate at least 5 days a week. The city's going to provide training in April and May, roll out the lifeguarding around Memorial Day. A fully staffed lifeguard program would be 15. That would allow 7 days a week of pretty much all day lifeguard coverage. With 12, we can be open 5 days a week with lifeguards. And with as few as 6, we can do like 3 days a week of lifeguard coverage at City Beach. Fewer than 6, it's not a viable program. So that's what we're really going for, is a minimum of 6 to run our lifeguard program. And of course, I'd love to offer $16, $18, $20 an hour, but it's, we have payroll policy. We have to follow benchmarking rules. There's issues around that. So we're hopeful that we can, get what we need to have a staff lifeguard program this summer. That was a lot.
It was a lot.
I'm very sorry about that, but there's just so much going on in this department, and it's actually 4 departments. So mine updates are a little bit longer than the others.
Good information.
I'll take questions.
Yes.
Are there any questions for Director Welker?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, President
I just
Rule.
had a quick question. I had somebody ask what how the lights work at the skate park.
In the northeast corner of the skate park, behind that kind of wave, concrete wave feature is a dial. I say, you know, it's like a hot tub at a hotel.
All
Turn
right.
the dial and you get up to an hour of lights, and then
Mhm.
they switch off after an hour and they turn them back on. And after
Okay.
10 o'clock, they can't be turned on.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so
all
yeah,
you
some
need.
people just don't. Actually, on every light post, it says switch is in corner of park or something.
Okay.
But the problem is when you show up at night, if you can't see your way around, it's hard to find that switch. So I think ultimately we might need to put like a little solar light pointing down at the switch so people can see it or something and make their way there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Duquette, recognized.
you mentioned benchmarking regulation. Could you just explain why that sets the,
I mean, that's a question for Cheryl, but that's how we set salaries at the city at every level, right? We
Okay.
look at comparable cities and we offer similar wages to what other municipalities are offering for each position, whether it's a guy in the street crew or the assistant planner or the administrative assistant at the front desk. So we benchmark all of our wages and salaries against similar cities in the region.
we're all
Yeah,
staff?
so for example, Bonners Ferry has indoor, pool lifeguard positions right now at $14.50 an hour. Post Falls is advertising lifeguards at $14.50 an hour. So if we're the one offering $16 an hour, it kind of goes against I think it's a policy. I don't know if it's a state law or anything, but.
And have you thought of talking to the?
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Katie is talking to the high school and she's working with their like jobs counselor over there, and she wants to get in. She's going to try to get in with the swim team and give presentations, try to actively recruit at the high school.
Sounds
So
good.
yes, definitely.
I have something different
Okay.
for you. That's also behind. I know you're gonna want to hear about it. The dark skies, the lighting. I was reading the 841 code, and we are like 5 years behind in some areas, 10 years. We have 5 years to accomplish things starting in 2020 and 10 years to accomplish building things starting in 2020. So I'm just wondering what we can do to get the lighting codes worked on, enforced. Code's not good without
I believe we do have
enforcement.
dark sky ordinances in our code, and I know that every development that we're reviewing in the planning department, we review the lighting plan to assure dark sky compliance. So all new development going on in Sandpoint right now is being reviewed for dark sky compliance.
Okay, the drive-through soda beer place on the
Okay.
highway.
Yeah.
I have a neighbor who has complained about their lights that shine in their backyard, has talked to the city several times. The city has talked to them. They've talked about fines. Nothing is being done. I know that one of these 5 years, I read this morning, talks about, okay, all existing exterior lighting that is not in compliance with this chapter shall conform within 5 years of the adoption of this chapter, unless a light trespass exists. A light trespass, of course, is going farther than what you're trying to shine on in somebody else's yard. Where light trespass exists, lighting shall conform within 60 days of notice from the city. So it's not happening, and I'm not sure what you do about that. But
That particular one hasn't come across my desk, that
Okay.
complaint, so I'm not sure who they're reaching out to, but.
okay,
Councilwoman Duquette,
ask her.
I think it's, thanks for bringing that to our attention. It's probably appropriate. Obviously, there's hundreds and hundreds of laws and elements of our code. Maybe give Director Welker a couple weeks to get back to you with familiarity with that section and how he proposes to approach it.
Okay, because there's also things in here about identifying local electricians, electric suppliers, sign companies, et cetera. I'm happy to help however I can. If there's something I can do it would be nice to have opportunity to see the planets that are out tonight, 5 planets. It's pretty hard in town. And the Northern Lights, I had to scramble to get someplace to really enjoy.
Yeah.
So anyway, since that's in our code, I would love to
Sure.
see that work done. Thanks.
Yeah. Anything
Other
else?
questions for Director Welker?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. I think that's it. Yeah, it is. Excellent. I have, before turning over to council for announcements, just one announcement. We were expecting to hear back on the Chrissy grant. You may recall this was our second railroad crossing elimination grant for out at Great Northern Road, Mountain View. We did hear from them 2 days ago, and we were not awarded the $29 million grant for that project. So anyone who lives on Goodman Drive, I know we had a number of residents who came and spoke with concern about if we were to receive that grant. Like all these grants, the application is the first part. And in this case, we were not awarded it. So that project will not be going forward because we certainly don't have $23 million to match our original match. On the upside, this will free up approximately $6 million that the Northern District of our Urban Renewal program had committed as a match. So I'll be working with staff to bring council some ideas on other both economic development and public infrastructure projects that would be eligible to work on in the Northern District. If you're not familiar with that, you can check out the city's website and click on the RAA layer, which is the revenue allocation area. Those are the areas where we can spend that money. Generally, it's from Samuels Ave down through Woodland, Great Northern, to Mountain View, all the way east to Boyer, then south, all the way actually over to Larch. So it's a pretty large area, and I think there's going to be a lot of really great projects that we can do in that area, and stormwater, economic development, some others. So I will be bringing you some ideas in the future, near future. Then with your support, we will take that to Urban Renewal and ask them to look at some other projects in that area. So with that, are there any council announcements or reports?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Council President Rule.
The Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee met on January 9th at 11:30 here in the council chambers and approved the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Old unfinished business was selection of members for subcommittees in multimodal transportation master plan, event planning subcommittee, development review subcommittee, intersection design subcommittee. All of those members were selected and approved. And then the discussion proceeded on how we notice for the city's open house processes. And the mayor and I had corresponded on that some. So I gave an update to the committee on that, and then suggestions were made as to the policy that's going to be developed at the city for open house and other types of public meeting notifications. And then there was a discussion held on possible funding connections within the community and potential grant sources to help fund pedestrian and bicycle projects. And then finally, we had presentation provided by the city engineer, Mr. Staglin, on the Cedar Street reconstruction project and some preliminary designs. And the design is about 75% complete in that area. And then a new business that was discussed by, again, Mr. Staglin, our city engineer, presented on right-of-way projects that lead to the water, as some of our streets dead end in the water, and discussed some possibilities of sidewalks and access points for redevelopment. And then we adjourned at 12:30.
Thank you, Council President Rule. Appreciate that thorough overview. It sounds like you're really taking on a lot, and thanks to all the volunteers in the PED and Bike Committee. Any other council reports or announcements?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman
the
Dick.
Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation, we had a lively meeting Tuesday, the 14th. First topic was the rehabilitation, the rehab project of the totem pole that sat out in front of the community hall there by a great young man named Curtis Sommerfeld as part of his Eagle Scout project. The totem pole was originally carved by Delmar Wood back in the 70s, and he's pretty much regionally renowned for his work. The revived totem pole will find its new home inside the community center for display. So big thank you to Curtis. Also, the commission is going to roll out the program. It's the Big Bellied Monster Art Program. You guys know our big bellied trash cans that we've got in the community. We've got 2 of them where area children from 4 to 12 years old can design vinyl wraps for 2 of these cities with a stipend, artist stipend of about $150 for winners. We'll have some more info to come as well as where you can pick up those submission forms. The 2023 Silver Box artist Ursula Roma was nice enough to donate her art that sat at the corner of 4th and Church, I believe, over by the post office, which also provides us the opportunity for establishing a community art corner in the lobby of Chambers. We've got the community character hour on KRFY. The show topic's going to be the Ice Age floods and how Sandpoint looks the way it does. The show will air at 8 a.m. on the 4th Monday. That's January 27th. The opportunity for the story walk at Travers Park was presented. The commission's been excited about an idea to continue to highlight the local authors and illustrators at Travers Park, referencing the We Go Round panels by Lori Reed and the celebration of Patrick McManus Into the Woods theme. The story walk will be funded by a generous community member and managed and maintained by the library. And last, I think the most exciting thing discussed was the Certified Local Government Grant that was presented as an opportunity to help with consultation support for an update to the design guidelines for downtown. The commission agreed that the grant would be a great way to support the process and an attractive process to the State Historic Preservation Office, who will be administering the grant. I believe Heather met with Jason and Bill to discuss that a little bit. There are some matching funds as well. I'll probably wait to hear how that meeting went to see where we can go with this grant and if this thing is viable, and potentially have some opportunities to get back to the council direction of staff for workshops with the community on some downtown design guidelines.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Councilman Dick. And just as a follow-up on that, I know the planning, senior planner Bill Dean is working through current permitting. It's a busy time. We need more horsepower in the planning department to more staffing to both do current permitting and long-range planning. And that's something you'll all be seeing in the budget as we bring forward this year's budget, my prioritization of additional planning staff. Anything else, Councilman Dick?
That's it.
Any other council members with reports or announcements?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I have an announcement, a little bit different, kind of in light of the
Councilwoman
fires.
Duquette, you're recognized.
Thanks. Kind of like, in light of the fires in California, that there will be an article in the Reader next week about Sandpoint Forward that I've mentioned before, a community-led project focused on resilience and the ability to effectively adapt to disasters. The article will invite the public to put some feedback on what natural disasters are they most concerned with and what we as a community could do to prepare more effectively for those hazards. We're inviting feedback with a survey, which will be linked in the article, and there'll be a public forum. The date and time for that will be determined by the time she gets the article in the paper.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilwoman Duquette. Any other council announcements or reports? All right, moving on to public comment. Next, we'll proceed with the public comment portion of the meeting. Thank you all for showing up tonight. It's great to see so many people in the audience. If you wish to speak and haven't yet completed a sign-up form, please do so and hand it to a staff member at the back of the room. If you'd like to speak on any item included in this evening's agenda, now is your opportunity to do so. For purposes of general public forum, you are also welcome to comment on any topic pertinent to the business of the city that is not included on the agenda. Those attending remotely who wish to speak may raise their hand on Zoom at this time. I would like to make everyone aware that the city does have a policy on public meeting decorum. The rules are posted here in the chambers at the entrance door. In summary, I would ask that everyone please be pleasant and respectful, not make derogatory statements about others, including city staff, not be disorderly and disruptive, no calling out or clapping or holding up signs. Please note that council cannot take testimony on any planning-related matter outside of an official public hearing. Public comment time is for comments only, no questions or debate. You are welcome to contact me during regular business hours if you have any questions or concerns about city business. Again, this is your opportunity to speak on items listed on the consent calendar or under new business or on any item of general nature relevant to the business of the city. This is the only public comment time that will be offered this evening. When it's your turn to speak, please state your name and whether you reside in the city limits. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. And with that, Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak at this evening's public comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Eric Nelson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. So I'm here again for kind of our biannual check-in. I am a city resident. I'm also involved with the Great Northern Disc Golf Association, which is a nonprofit that runs the disc golf course out on the Baldy property. Usually it's just kind of usership's up. Things are looking good out there. The public's really behind it. And our mission is to obviously preserve this. So this year we're super encouraged with getting a longer term on our license to operate out there, as well as just, it seems like just more positive engagement with the city. And so we're here to just check in, let you know, usership's up. One little nugget I brought with as far as that. There's a UDisc app that some players use. I'd say it's a minority, especially locally because they know the course, but it identified 700 unique users, and nearly all of that, and the vast majority were from 30 different states and in Canada.
At our site?
Amazing.
700 different users from outside of town.
It was just under, I think it's 696,
Wow.
696 unique players, and over 550, about 550 of them were from out of state. 30, and it
incredible.
represent 30 different states. They broke that down. When some other little tidbits that they break down, that equated to just under 7,800 miles walked between those users, and just under 8,000 recreational hours. And again, that's just kind of a small slice of the usership out there. Just kind of a new way to look at it. Like, we've measured it consistently just through donations that go into the bucket, which is obviously someone might put 5, the next 5 people might not go through. So it's just a rough gauge, but what we've seen obviously is continued usership. The only year that it didn't go up was after COVID. COVID was like, it spiked. And it was just a huge resource for the community at that particular time. Of course, it has been. And our goal is to expand the usage out there and bring in other groups and stay engaged with the city to best pick a direction, because we know things are fluid with that property. We know there's a lot going on in the city. Absolutely. There's a couple of different directions that can take that's been talked about. We just want to hone in on what the best direction is going to be and how we can best support that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric. Appreciate it. And I would just encourage you to stay in close contact with either myself or Director Welker on the dynamic situation
Absolutely.
with our wastewater plant. And the
We
fact
actually
that-
sat down with Maeve and Jason before Christmas and had a pretty informative meeting. So yeah, there's a lot more to talk about, but we're looking forward to doing exactly that.
Thanks for the update.
Yep, thank you.
Sadie Long.
Good evening, Ms. Long.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Sadie Long, and I'm the Commodore of the Sandpoint Sailing Association, also known as SSA. I'm speaking today on behalf of the SSA, which is a 501c3 established in 1996 that operates on the 100 dock of the Windbag Marina. SSA has a long-standing partnership with the city of Sandpoint to provide youth and adult sailing lessons, and we also host community sailboat racing, weekly sailing social events, and regional and national regattas. We provide opportunities to our members and the general public to go sailing, whether they have a boat or not. Maintaining our operation on the 100 dock is critically important for us to continue providing our valuable services and lake access to our community. We would like to express our perspective of pending and potential changes to the Windbag Marina and City Beach area. First, we would like to see the 100 dock preserved as a community lake access point. We have grave concerns for the safety of the sailing community and the general public should the organization or structure of Windbag Marina change. Specifically, permitting power boats on the west side of the 100 dock, permitting power boat rentals in the marina, or extending the docks in Windbag Marina would forever change the original intention of this area. We would ask the city to continue its current policies and adhere to the conditions of the encroachment permit, which allowed for the development of the Windbag Marina. This permit specifies that the west side of the 100 dock be reserved for non-motorized watercraft only. Second, SSA is concerned about changes to parking at City Beach. The encroachment permit also specifically outlines that there must be 0.5 parking spaces for each of the 130 slips in the Windbag Marina. The current parking arrangement already utilizes all 45 of the parking spaces on the jetty and an additional 28 spaces in the City Beach parking area. SSA is advocating that the parking on the jetty be specifically designated for marina use only and for 28 additional designated parking spaces at the City Beach Park. Additionally, we are advocating for the continuation of designated spaces near the City Beach boat ramps that allow for the preparation, launching, and retrieval of all types of watercraft. As grateful members of this community, we are advocating for our leaders to find a balance in providing lake access for both community members and visitors to our beautiful town.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you.
Mary Catherine Roll.
Good evening.
Councilman. I'm Mary Catherine Roll. I live at 413 South Second Avenue and have lived here for 30 years. I'm extremely concerned with the reduction in required parking for Averill Hospitality because it will crowd residents out. The beach was built by predecessors for the people who live here. I've heard government grant money was used for the purpose of residents, not commercial interests, businesses, or out-of-town developers. I've enjoyed being involved with the Sandpoint Sailing Association, spending many hours on this wonderful lake, cruising, racing, and introducing many people and teens to sailing. Our family has enjoyed City Beach and have spent many hours digging in the sand, picnicking, and playing in the playground, and swimming without noise from any individual watercraft. Losing slips that are used for youth sailing classes is not acceptable. I don't like seeing the face of our town altered so drastically by outside interests. You and your neighbors expect you to serve community over developers' business interests. Furthermore, I don't want to see the city being sold off and potentially losing parking, not just in the vicinity of the marina and beach areas, but with any conventions, downtown parking will suffer just as it has in Coeur d'Alene. Council members who may benefit from monetary gains should recuse themselves when it comes to this matter. Also, any time limits for parking would severely limit sailing and many other activities in this area. Thank you for listening to your constituents.
Thank you, Mary.
Clay Hutchison.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors.
evening,
Nice
Clay.
to see you all again. Clay Hutchison, City of Sandpoint resident. A couple items. Enjoyed the presentation by Director Welker. I think improvements to the City Beach will always be welcome. He referenced, I think, a 2010 report, and those improvements have been made since then. And just want to remind you, we had a 2020 adopted master plan for the City Beach of the rest of the Parks Department. And as I understand from his presentation that some long overdue improvements to the existing location of the boat launches and to the RV park. And when you spend a $1.6 million, that would sort of indicate that the location of those probably will not change in the future. So I just want to remind you again that the RV park that is now city-owned came about due to a land swap that had a very specific purpose associated with that. And that was to improve the boat mooring and the parking at the city beach. Specifically, the idea was to move the boat launch to where the RV park is and to separate out the trailer and boat parking from the automobile parking and just remove that conflict that we're starting to hear about and have always had. And so, if you're going to significantly change the direction of what that RV park is for, I just want to remind you that that was a fairly contentious land swap. There were many people in favor of it. I was one of those. I think that if nothing else is done to City Beach, realigning that, which improves safety, is an important thing. But there were a significant number of people that thought this was one of the worst ideas you could do, giving away what they felt was more valuable property to a private enterprise. So if you're going to change the objective of that, the stated objective, you probably, I would like to suggest, have significant public hearings and things on that, rather than just getting grants and spending money, because you're hearing more and more comments about the, and I'll use someone else's phrase, the privatization of the city beach. And that's a concern. You're hearing it from all kinds of stuff. We do not want to see another Travis Park incident develop there. Enough on that. What I really wanted to mention was on your number 8 coming up, the presentation for the land acquisition. And I'm going to run out of time here, so maybe someone will donate me some time. No one's going to object with the idea of extending the pathway, but when I look at the, we don't get a chance to respond after the presentation. We have to respond before, but going by the staff report, the recommendation is to approve the purchase on basically the appraisal that the railway is giving, $659,000. If you understand that land, you realize there really is no commercial value to that. Of course, there's a value to the city for putting in a more pathways, but unless I'm missing something, and the staff who do with codes can go determine that if some creative developer could figure out what to do with that land really has no value. It certainly, in my mind, has nowhere near $659,000 worth of value. I don't know where that appraisal came from. Typically, when railroads give up their right of way, they do it on a donation basis, either to a municipality or to Rails for Trails. And that's the approach that should happen. Please do not authorize your staff to go and pursue a $659,000 deal. That would be a complete waste of money on that. And even if it was valued at that and worth that, that is not a good use of the resource. We're not going to gain enough to spend that kind of money. And I suspect with some decent negotiations, Mayor, you could probably get that donated, because right now it's a liability and probably is a fire liability if you've been to see that. So please work on a different approach. We love the trails. Spending that kind of money is just not a good use of resources.
Thank you, Clay. And just a couple of updates. One, I assure you that thanks to our volunteers on the Park and Recs Commission, we will very strongly vet any changes to the guidance document, which is the 2020 park plan that you referenced. We will certainly run it through our public committees. And then on the pathway, that was our appraisal, and there is a competing offer from an adjacent property owner that would like it very much to develop it commercially. So,
Well, that'd be great. And then when they come in for approval, make them do a path.
good thinking. Well, thanks for your time.
You're looking at that. It's not clear from the report that anyone's doing anything other than accepting an appraisal. Who knows what that is? And it's just kind of like consultants' reports. Sometimes there's fuzziness in these reports.
Absolutely.
And we just want to make sure that you're looking at those reports and not just accepting it, whether you have to. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for your comments, Clay.
Mr. Mayor, no one else has signed up to speak during public comment time.
All right. Thank you, public and folks who are
Nobody's raising their hand.
Bring that forward, please.
You just didn't turn it in.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and step to the podium. This is Jennifer Ball.
City resident.
Hi, Ms. Paul.
I am wondering, who do I go to talk about the water treatment plant plans that are happening and the increase in the sewer bill? Who do I go talk?
It'd probably be best to start with Holly Ellis, our Public Works Director, who's in the back there with her hand up.
Okay.
And if you have further questions, I'm happy to visit with you as well.
Okay. Can I state the 3 questions that I wrote down?
Sure.
Okay.
You got three minutes and a little, so.
Wonderful. Why are we issuing new permits for housing, et cetera, if the treatment plant we have now is not sustainable? Can we have a moratorium on building And my last question, are there any incentives for those of us who live in Sandpoint full-time? And are there fees for part-time residents or vacation rentals? Thanks.
Those are great questions. Jennifer, if we have your contact information, Holly or I will get in touch with you.
I'm not aware of anyone else, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This will conclude the public comment portion of this evening meeting. Thank you, public and others for turning out and tuning in. We will now proceed with the consent calendar. For the record, the total amount of bills is $1,583,113.15, reflecting $835,994.82 for regular payables and $747,118.33 for payroll. Council, are there any questions or any items you wish to remove from the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman Howard.
I would request that we remove item number 4 to new business for discussion.
That item number 4 will be, I don't believe that requires a second. New business, we will do that.
Thank you.
And that's the purchase of budget vehicles for community planning, development, and parks.
Correct.
Yes, excellent. PO 251453. Any other council members wish to remove or any questions? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dick, second by Spiro. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Schreiber,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Duquette,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Howarth,
Yes.
Counselor Sprow.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to old business. Number 7, during our December 18th, 2024 meeting, the council heard an appeal from Dick Villelli and his legal counsel, Norm Semenko, to the city's denial of water service for the proposed McGee development in the city of Ponderay. Council voted to postpone a decision on this matter until tonight's meeting. And at this point, I do wish to inform the council of the following and make a request. The city has requested of our water engineer modeler, a third party, to run that model. Just this afternoon, right before this meeting, we received the preliminary response, not a full analysis of that model. I believe that this information will be beneficial. It is what the appellant had requested. So in order to consider the information that will be analyzed and provide you and the appellant with more information, I would ask that you consider making a motion to reopen the hearing and continue it to a date certain, which would be the second meeting in February, so that both the appellant and our staff and a full engineering analysis can be provided for your deliberations on this matter.
Mr. Mayor, my apologies for the interruption. We did hear from the appellant and they would prefer the second meeting in March. They won't be out of town in February. So that would be March 19th.
So that request would be modified to continuing to and noticing for a March 19th meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Council President Rule,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Duquette. Is there
Mr. Mayor, one additional piece of information, just to keep the record very clear, is that all of this information will also be provided to the appellant so that at that hearing that will be on March 19th, both sides again will have an opportunity to present to you and comment on the information that they've received. And then you can deliberate and make a decision after you've received comments from both sides.
And again, I presume just to affirm, no discussion amongst council members because this is an open situation.
That is correct.
Excellent. Again, motion in a second, I believe. Any council discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Duquette,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Howarth,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Sprow,
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
On that hearing, if anyone's here for the continuation of that hearing on the appeal, that will again be noticed and moved to March 19th for the city to provide analysis of the water pressures in the system to both the appellant and the public and the council. Moving on to new business, I guess There's still a few people here. Councilman Howarth, I believe the process is to move the item pulled off consent to the end of new business, so we'll continue on. For the second to final item on the agenda, staff would like to present an opportunity for the city to acquire some railroad land that would allow for an extension of the north end of the Sandpoint Dover Community Trail. This will be a presentation by Planning and Community Development Director Jason Welker. Welcome back, Director Welker.
Okay. Just give me a moment to join the Zoom meeting here, please. Sorry, we went through that previous item way faster than I expected. Okay, I will share my screen with you. Okay. So, council, as you've seen in your packet tonight, we have an opportunity to make an offer should you choose to approve this request where'd my appropriate screen go? For a piece of property that you can see here. This is approximately 2.5 acres. Thank you, Melissa. Of railroad right-of-way from the old Union Pacific line that forms the same right-of-way that was about 24 years ago turned to the Dover Sandpoint shared use path, which terminates at the intersection of Larch Street and 5th, directly south of the blue area on the map there. I did highlight the city-owned property that this forms a potential future connection to. And I can show you actually. Let me pull up our GIS maps here quickly, and I'll show you what's even further north, because thinking long-term, the possibilities for connectivity here and the implementation of a vision from our multimodal transportation master plan and past trail plans that the city has looked at, there is actually additional right-of-way north of the city-owned property that is owned by, no, that's not the one. That is owned by our friends at the Friends of the Ponderay Bay Trail. So actually this piece of land here, north of the railroad bridge there, directly north of city-owned property, is owned by the Friends of Ponderay Bay Trail. And that was acquired by them with the intent of someday connecting the Sandpoint to Dover pathway. These are long-term plans. These are not things we're going to implement in the next few years, even if we take ownership of this right-of-way. But it is the best opportunity, the only opportunity we have to secure an essential right-of-way for long envisioned multimodal connections between communities. Imagine a shared use path connecting the city of Ponderay to the city of Dover. This is the way to achieve that. So the property in question you can see on the GIS map here. And I did get an email from Councilman Schreiber today that made me go way back in my emails in communications with Union Pacific. And Kyle was asking whether, and I'll outline it here for you, whether this area that I'm outlining was included in the purchase. And in addition, this area right here, it's just this little polygon right here as well. So I thought I had some communication with Anna Palmer from the Union Pacific, and sure enough, she did confirm in an email months ago that the area in question, which I'm showing up here, is included in the deeded property that we would be making an offer on here. So this picture is a little confusing because north is on the right and west is where north would normally be. So she did outline this and show me the 1960s, deeds for this property to indicate that this would be included in the purchase. And why is that important? Because this is not just a property for a trail. This is a property for a neighborhood park. Surrounding this is the low-income Milltown housing development and senior housing. We've got, I mentioned it earlier, the Tribute multifamily, which in phase 1 has 76 units, and in phase 2 will have another 76 units. There's another 300 families that are going to be living right at the west end of this right-of-way. Going back to our GIS map, I will just show you. You can see Milltown. This is senior housing down here, and low-income housing, affordable housing up here. This is the location of Tribute. There's going to be about 150 units there. And if we zoom in, there's already an easement on the title for this property, on the plat for this property, for a city-maintained right-of-way along the north end of that property. So again, this is something that would be worked on with the Parks Commission, with you over the coming years. Acquiring the property is just step one, but the long-term vision that I would propose is that this becomes a continuation of the Sandpoint to Dover pathway, forms an essential route for non-motorized commuters coming from all the single-family development up on North Boyer into town, no longer have to, brave the roundabout. They can cut through north of Super One and get on a rail trail conversion heading south to Larch Street, and then they're downtown. So this is an essential piece of property. We heard Mr. Hutchinson indicate that there's probably no commercial value to this, but I would point out that there is a very large hotel right here that I'm sure has plans to expand, and they'd love nothing more to add 30% to their footprint. And the suggestion that we could then turn around and exact that right of way back from the owners of that hotel, we've actually checked with legal about that. We discussed that internally, and we have no legal means to exact right of way that's not adjacent to existing right of way that we already own. So frontage improvements cannot include a 50-foot right of way that the property owners already own. So we can require them, and we will someday if these developers ever come forward with a plan to redevelop the hotel, whose name I can never remember because it changes name every 2 years. They will be required to build to modern standards, to have zero setback. This is in a commercial zone, but we can't in the future tell them that they have to give us this right of way back. It would not be adjacent to a city public right of way. So we don't know for certain, but we suspect that the other offer, Union Pacific has had another offer on this property. They're giving us first rights of refusal. If we don't buy it now, it will be bought by a private developer. We don't know who it is, but we suspect it's probably this hotel who has plans to expand sometime in the future and redevelop that property. So I'll put the image back up. It's 2.53 acres plus that little rectangle at the top. We would work with our Parks Planning and Development Manager, Maeve, and with adjacent residents of the neighborhoods that this park would serve, and hopefully in the next few years, write grants, allocate parks capital improvement funds, do what we do to try to get financial support to develop this into a beautiful rail trail conversion with hopefully some little pocket parks to serve the low-income neighborhoods in this part of town. So the funding for this purchase would come from our development impact fee parks funds. As the staff report indicates, those funds can only be legally used for the expansion of parkland or improvements of existing parks to serve new growth in Sandpoint. So we can't use those funds for other parks improvements. For example, repaving City Beach parking lot. Trust me, I'd love to use those funds to repave City Beach parking lot. But they are not legally allowed to be used for anything other than expanding our level of service to serve the growth that we are seeing in Sandpoint. And Milltown is a relatively new development serving a couple hundred families, and we're going to see another 150 multifamily units go in here in the next few weeks. It's literally the definition of serving growth by putting a park in this area. So that's a proposal. We haven't made an offer yet. Just to clarify also, the appraisal was commissioned by the city of Sandpoint. It was not provided to us by the railroad. We did put forth, we've been in negotiations and as you can tell, we've settled about $80,000 below the appraised value. So I think the mayor agrees that this is a pretty good opportunity for us. We have no mechanism for actually investing in and improving this park right now. This would be a securing this property for a future park and trail project. So I'd love to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Director Welker. I just have two other things to point out before we open it up for council discussion. Can you go back to our GIS map, the city GIS map? And just zoom out about 3 rows or 4 rows so we can see and then click on the RAA, revenue allocation area to the left there.
So the purple.
Yep. So I just want to point out a couple of things. I had mentioned earlier in the meeting that this purple area is that area where the northern district of our urban renewal can spend money. I had mentioned that in light of the failure of the Christie grant, we had pledged a $6 million match for this purple area, basically for that project, but can be spent in this purple area. So this may be another way to make our dollars go further. We could approach urban renewal and ask them to consider sharing the acquisition cost for that land area within the purple for this purchase. And that's, I think, very interesting to consider. In addition, Director Welker, I think it would be interesting if you add up the total numbers of workforce housing, senior housing, and the 100+ units for Tribute, which is right, that centerpiece right there. Collectively, those three, roughly 300 units, I believe our park impact fee is close to 2,000 and change.
$3,500 per multifamily dwelling unit. So
Yeah,
you're
so-
looking at about $1 million between those 300
So,
units.
yeah, if you look at it, these units right here, this is really an example of growth paying gross cost. These units have actually contributed a significant dollar amount to the park expansion. And to some degree, there is a justification to develop parks in proximity to where the units are being developed. So I just want to make sure the public's clear. These aren't dollars we're taking from some other needed fund or some other priority. These are dollars specifically collected from the growth in our community to offset the cost of that growth by buying additional parkland. With that, I would certainly open this up to council for questions, discussion. If the council were so friendly or not opposed, I would expect that we would bring back a ratification of this in the terms of authorization at our next meeting for me to proceed with negotiations and offers on this property. Any council questions or discussions?
Mr. Mayor, I do.
Councilman Howarth.
Jason, could you, I'm not all that familiar with this area. Could you highlight on this map where the closest parks are to this housing units that we're highlighting there?
See if do we have a parks layer on?
That
GIS,
would be
Mayor?
Hickory.
Recreation?
We do have a
Hickory Park would be the closest park right here.
Across.
That's a good point. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks. Yep, Hickory Park is the roundabout, of course. Well, sorry, that's just north of the roundabout. So
Yep.
it's not that far away, to be honest. Hickory Park, I found out, was the site of the old city shop. That when it was moved in the 80s, we developed that property into a park.
And do we have any parks? So the old U of I development, anything up north?
No, and in our 2020 parks plan, it was identified that the northern area seeing the most growth, the northern part of town was where we should be looking to expand our parks in the future. So this would be, I believe, the furthest north park that we have. We do own about 3 acres on Sand Creek. It's called the Cedars. It's actually ignored in our 2020 parks plan, but our 2010 parks plan called for eventually developing the Cedars as a passive waterfront park. It's on Sand Creek. It basically serves the Jenny Lane neighborhood. I think that neighborhood's ironically called the Pines, isn't it? So the Cedars is next to the Pines. Is it the Cedars? Okay, it's the Cedars Park. That's a city-owned property that hasn't been developed as a park, but we would love to look at improving the Cedars Park sometime. That's north of the Schweitzer cutoff roundabout.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Howard, just a little history there. When I was not working for or elected, I did work for the developers of the U of I property. And there was a desire at that point to dedicate some land for a park in exchange for a credit on the impact fees on that property. We were unsuccessful at forwarding those negotiations with the city. And at this point, all of the U of I property is encumbered as private property and would likely be very expensive to purchase based on recent sales.
Yes.
I think about $200,000 a 5,000 square foot lot.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Council President Rule.
My comments would just be that the Hickory Park is close, but it does, for all those developments that we were referencing, you would have to cross that artery. Boyer is quite an artery for a smaller charter to cross to use parkland. And I think as far as long-range plans going way back to Bonner County Trails plans and having been involved with trails for probably over 15 years now. There were ideas to continue that Dover path, maybe eventually get a connection under the railway. And that's why the Ponderay, Friends of Ponderay Trail purchased that other piece of property. So my opinion would be that there have been a lot of other people who have put effort and thought into continuing a pathway here. And I think if we shied away from this purchase, that as Sandpoint develops more and there becomes more traffic, that we might look in the rearview mirror and wish we had made this purchase. So I think it is in line with what a lot of the other members of the public have been working on for quite some time. It's connectivity, and that's also mentioned in our comp plan that was recently passed. So I think this is in line with what the residents of Sandpoint desire. And
Thank you, Council President Rule. And Jason, do we have any park utilization information? I used, when my children were younger, we used to heavily utilize Hickory Park, and it seemed often very busy and crowded.
Yeah, there is data in our parks plans, but I don't have any of that in front of me.
That might be interesting to look at, just at how much utilization Hickory Park does have. I suspect that with all the growth around this area, it's very heavily utilized these days. Any other council questions or discussions on this opportunity?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman
Yeah, I
Spiro.
agree with Council President Rule. If we're looking to buy this for tomorrow, it doesn't seem like a good idea. We're already going to get a lot of pushback. It doesn't look like a very productive piece of property, but thinking about the future, my great grandkids and anybody else in here, I think looking back on that, we kick ourselves for not at least looking into it.
Councilman Spiro, I would hope that we get this done way before your great grandkids are around to enjoy it. There are rail trail grants. The National Rail Trail Conservancy provides planning grants for projects like this. If we were to purchase this property this year, you could bet my team would be writing grant applications in the next 6 months to actually get rail trail funds.
I love being proven wrong, but I also know government. So.
And also I've pitched this to again, my favorite person in the world, Austin Hull, our parks maintenance supervisor. And he of course balks at the idea of spending millions of dollars in this corridor. And he says, we can go build a trail in there. We don't need $1 million. We'll go build a trail in there. So we could do this incrementally as well. As I understand it, the railroad would come take all the rail ties and the steel out of there because that has value. So they'd actually do some of that preliminary clearing for us. We don't have to go in there and, figure out how to scrap 2,000 yards of steel rails. They'd take that out because they reuse that or sell it or whatever. So they'll do some of the preliminary cleanup for us at the time of closing, as far as I understand it, which would make it actually easier and cheaper for us to go in and put, for example, just a gravel path in. Phase 1 might just be get rid of all the underbrush, put a gravel trail in, and then we do the fundraising to do the improvements. We could put a swing set in the pocket park. We can put nice benches. We can do some placemaking type stuff, other improvements over time. There's the highest end. It could be a natural surface trail for a few years, a gravel trail. A lot of rail trails around the country are gravel trails. It doesn't necessarily have to be built to the highest, engineering standards available for millions of dollars in the next 5 years.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Dick.
Jason and Mayor and staff, thank you guys for the work that you put on. I know you've turned this around quite quickly. Eric Nelson from the Great Northern Disc Golf Course, or Great Northern Disc Golf, came and spoke and talked about the unique users, the recreation hours, the miles walked at the Baldfoot property. Any of this $659,000 could be put or applied to the Baldfoot property. Do you guys have any different plans for the Baldfoot property, which is already parked out with great stewardship from the Great Northern Disc Golf Course? Would we be losing this as an opportunity for a parks addition by going with this?
Great. Those are great questions, Councilman Dick. And this is one of those situations where we have lots of opportunities ahead of us. I'd like to just start the discussion on that, a couple points to bring the public up to speed. The property that's highlighted there, the Baldfoot property, is owned by our sewer utility. I think, as the council knows, but the public might not be aware, in the next year, we will likely going out for a bond for funding of our wastewater treatment plant replacement. Because this was purchased by the sewer utility, it is likely that we would have to sell that as the utility to put as much funding as available to the plant replacement. So when we think about that, there's a couple things. One, I'll let legal correct me if I'm elaborating too much, but we do have to, if we sell it to anyone other than a government entity, we would have to have an appraised value and sell it for that appraised value. So as it relates to us buying it from ourselves, you're absolutely correct. This area would be eligible for our park impact fee, a park expansion. And there's 2 points I want to make on that. One, as I mentioned about urban renewal, it's approximately half that property is in the urban renewal footprint. So in theory, we may be able to, well, you sort of direct urban renewal. You set their plan and they implement it. So if urban renewal were to purchase the Northern District, half that railroad right of way, that would free up roughly, 300 and change thousand from those park impact fees to be used elsewhere in the city. But I also want to point out that with the growth that's occurring, we do expect those park impact fees to continue to flow in. They are the best and the best method for growth to pay for the expansion of our park system. And I would expect those coffers to be refilled and us to have adequate dollars to do both.
Okay, thank you.
I would, of course, defer to our Parks and Rec Commission and on all those decisions for their recommendations.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, it's up to this council, all these decisions, right? So any future sale of the Baldfoot property would have to go through you all. And if the priority is on acquiring that property, you control the purse strings, so we can make that happen too.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilwoman Paquette.
I have to agree with Councilman Dick about the Baldfoot. That's a prime piece of property I think we could utilize well. You also said for what we're looking at to use the RAA, the
Urban renewal dollars.
what kind of dollars?
They're urban renewal. That's
Thank
from
you.
our urban renewal.
Is it the same fund you're talking about?
No, these
Okay.
dollars come from the tax increment that grows when areas in the URA, this yellow area,
Okay.
when development occurs there, those taxes that would traditionally flow to the county and other entities are not captured by the county. They go to our urban renewal district, and they are able to be expended on public infrastructure and public projects in the RAA, which is the purple shaded that was just up.
Okay, I kind of understand where that money comes from. I'm just wondering, you said to use that, it could be used for this property.
It could, some of the railroad spur property does fall into the footprint of
I
the
see, but not all
RAA.
of it. Okay.
Correct. So that area there falls in. So I think we could both make our park expansion dollars from impact fees go further and potentially do both unless there's some massive recession and we see no more growth in town. And a question for legal, sorry, Councilwoman
That's fine,
Duquette.
go ahead.
If we were to purchase the Baldfoot property from the utility, are we under the same obligations to purchase it at a appraised value, or could we purchase it for, say, the acquisition price plus some?
You have to have an appraisal and purchase it for fair market value.
So we want to get that appraised. If we're going to buy it, we want to get it appraised when land values are down.
Right.
And if we
then
want to sell
remember-
it, we want to get it appraised when the land values are up.
Right. And appraisal values that you use for establishment of that purchase price are only valid for 6 months. So you want to be very careful of the timing of pulling that appraisal as well.
I guess then if I could continue the budget for this year's 300,000, I see. Is that correct for land acquisition?
Oh, so yeah, I'm aware you talked to Sarah Linz about this as well, and she wasn't feeling well tonight, so she wasn't able to come in. So she came and talked to me a little bit about it. Just to clarify, we've had 300,000 kind of as a placeholder in the budget for parks property acquisition coming out of the Development Impact Fee Parks Fund for several years now. That no action has been taken. As you know, the city has not purchased parks land since that money was put in the budget years ago. So it's just been added as a placeholder in case an opportunity like this came up. but that 300,000 is not what we have available. It's what's in the budget. The fund itself, the fund balance, I think she showed you is closer to 700,000 of what's been accumulated in that. Just to clarify, the development impact fee parks funds can be used for land acquisition or for parks improvements that serve new growth. So the playground at Traverse Park, the matching funds that the city obligated for the LWCF grant, the 600,000 or so, or 560,000, was actually parks capital, or sorry, development impact fee funds as well, because we're building a large playground serving growth in that part of town. So that's why we don't have $2 million in there, $1.5 million in there, because we have been using those funds for parks improvements to serve growth. This would be the first example of the use of those funds for parks land acquisition in quite some time. I don't actually know when the last time the city acquired new parkland was using development impact.
Maybe
fee
ever.
funds. I don't know if we ever have. So this would be a first, possibly.
And are any of those rails to trails for purchasing? Are they just for, is the money that Rails to Trails has?
Good question. I've looked into the Rails to Trails programs, the National Rails to Trails Conservancy, it's called. They don't give the type of money that typically could be used for a major capital project. It's more like a planning or a design type grant. So as you know, like, you know, a $30,000 or $40,000 grant could be used to do a full design and engineering and actually get the documents we need to then go out and hire a firm to do the work. But roughly speaking, about a 10 to 15% of any project is going to be the planning and engineering. So if this is you know, it might be a $250,000 project to turn this into a rail trail in the future, we have to eventually budget $20,000 to $35,000 for planning and design for that project. So we would start on that effort in the next year or two once if we own this property. And this is a project that, you know, you guys know me, I'm a trails guy. This would be a very exciting project for me to spearhead. I love the connectivity. I love the multimodal aspects of this, the you know, serving a traditionally underserved part of Sandpoint. This is one of our only low-income neighborhoods in Sandpoint, literally, like technically federally subsidized low-income neighborhoods. It's a great thing to provide a park to a traditionally underserved part of town, I believe.
Before you would proceed on anything, there's no time to involve the public?
Well, this is actually going to be presented to the Parks Commission to get their input as well. And then any planning that we do towards a park would fully involve the public. We would have, you know, invite community members, maybe go to this neighborhood, do something on site there. This would be a really fun planning project for a future park development effort. And yeah, the public would be heavily involved in that for sure.
But not for the purchase.
The purchase we're bringing to the Parks Commission at our next Parks Commission meeting. Those meetings are way too short, in my opinion. We need like 3 hours for Parks Commission because there's so much going on. And then after we get a vote from them, we bring it back to council next month. Assuming Union Pacific accepts our offer.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to, Councilman, Director Welker, can you just leave there? I just want to add a couple other comments to the context here. The first is Chestnut Street crosses right through Milltown. Next one up, right there. Yeah, and I just want people to look at, there's been some very high level talk of making a better connectivity over to US 2. So with this acquisition, we might in the future be able to make a connection to Chestnut and provide, you know, a street continuation through there. I think that's worth at least keeping our eyes on. And then also, if you go a little further south to the corner of Larch and US 2, I think we've all seen people come south here and cut through the parking lot. We know that there's now a Jersey barrier there, so you can't do it. But one of our traffic problems, well, I should say the state's traffic problems, is, you know, the stacking when people want to take a right on Larch or if someone's going straight, they can't take a right on Larch. So, you know, a successful acquisition and a future development of this hotel site might give us the ability to acquire that corner there, the northwest corner of Larch and US 2, to get a turn lane. And maybe that means putting a, giving up some of this or selling some of this land back to the hotel. But I think it gives us optionality if we come into a situation where we, a little bit north. Thanks. Just hold it right there. If we ever needed to kind of acquire that corner to put in a dedicated right turn lane, if you're heading south on US 2. And then finally, when we look at what are the threats to this, I can tell you, depending on who acquired it, they could make that a parking lot. They could obviously build on it. There's a number of things that could occur on this property if somebody bought it. It's in our commercial zone. The setbacks are very permissive there. In theory, you could build a very long building probably if you really wanted to, but I think there is private value. I did negotiate with the railroad and tried to get the price down very low. I made a lot of objections to it, and their response is about $80,000 below the appraised value was the best I could get. So with that, just wanted to add that. Further discussion or comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Council President Roll.
Right-hand turn lane, my comment would be, wouldn't that be a state project because that's the state highway?
It
And
would.
so potentially if there was development there, the state would require the development to put in that lane?
I'm still
Yeah, that's great. I
trying to
know, but
understand the state transportation department's capacity to require development to put in turn lanes.
okay, that's enough said. We don't have
But
to.
yes, I think
Well-
it could provide at least a negotiation tool. It might be a three-party negotiation tool between the state and the city and the future owner of that property. But yeah, I just throw it out as optionality that it might provide.
Mr. Mayor?
I'll go ahead, Councilwoman Schreiber.
So, yeah, I'd like to agree with the council president that this connectivity and extending that trail is great. And I do think that in the years and decades to come, we would be glad that we protected that right away rather than seeing it get blocked by a giant building. It checks a lot of boxes. You've heard me talk about the decentralization of parks, and this is exactly what I was talking about. So big kudos on that one. I love it. The question that I asked, thanks for the quick response on that, Jason. The fact that it includes that full square and not just the two old railroad tracks makes it even more attractive. There's already a playground that abuts that land. So I think there's desire for demand for a playground right there. And I think that it would be a great spot for one. I do have some concerns though. The map that you show does not include the east-west railway right-of-way. And you can see that it's not quite east-west, but more so than the other ones. And so would there be some sort of agreement with the owner of that property, whether it's still Great Northern or whoever, that are people using our park and we own property on both sides of it?
Is Brandon still here, Holly? Cause he told, I think he might have left, but I think he's aware of an easement across that property that exists already, and that's already envisioned as a city maintained pathway along the railroad tracks there. So
Okay.
I don't know if he's gonna be back, but he's aware of an easement across that plat already for that right of way on the north there.
Excellent.
So that's a guaranteed access to Boyer. And this whole vision of a connection to Boyer wouldn't really work if we didn't have an easement across that property.
Curious.
No, I guess I'm talking
I believe
about.
he's talking about the railroad track that runs east-west, the Great Northern Railroad track that's in white at the north end of this, right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the straight section of the right of
Right here,
way,
you mean?
if you were to continue north on
Yeah.
that straight section, we're not going to own the east-west that it crosses,
Correct.
nor the straight section above it.
Right.
Now, those are abandoned. There isn't active railways there, but you can see it doesn't actually touch the property that you've highlighted in yellow. So my concern would
Right.
be that we'd have two
Yeah.
parks that had a strip in between that we couldn't actually access. And if they were connected, that would make a great piece of property there. If you look at how the railroad is maintaining this piece of property right now,
Yeah.
that could become a bit of a health and safety hazard if we had park space back there with an unmaintained piece of property that has all sorts of debris and old railroad lines on it. So that gives me a little bit of pause. I would also echo the concerns that we heard from the public about the price tag. For that cost, I don't know how much trail we're really going to be able to build. And I looked into the rest of the Dover Trail, and not a single inch of it is owned by the city of Sandpoint or the city of Dover. It's all either the Department of Transportation or the Department of Lands. And so this would definitely be breaking with the tradition that brought us the trail so far for us to purchase it rather than another entity owning it. And I don't know if there's any other possibilities out there. I would certainly hate to see this piece get snatched up while we tried to figure that out.
I do think exploring the opportunity to include with this sale agreement an easement across this piece to connect our city property is a really good suggestion. So we should explore that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That would make, and even including the easement, the ability for us to maybe make minor improvements so that it isn't a safety hazard. You know, not just allowing people to walk across it, but to remove rusty pieces of metal that may be sticking out of the ground from 50 years ago.
Or certainly fence it off, yeah.
Yeah, ideally, if this were a connected trail on a city property, this section at least would be, you know, some sort of fence to keep people from wandering off of city right of way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I would feel a lot more comfortable if it did include that more or less east-west section or that in continuation of the straight section. I don't know if there was any talks with the railway.
Well, the
if they're
problem is
interested.
just about 100 yards north, this is actually an active rail line. So right now, this corridor goes straight into an active rail line here.
Right.
Yeah.
And the city property that's trapped behind it doesn't have any access to it, really.
It does have an easement. You can see that they cross there over those rail lines, a crossing at least. That's how you get to that back
Oh,
building.
you mean right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Kyle's talking about over to this side.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Councilman Schreiber, sorry to interrupt. I would point out that if we were to acquire this, that next piece that's likely to be abandoned is now going to be surrounded by city property. And I imagine the appraised value will come in much lower if it's surrounded by city value property. But I hear your points. I think they're good ones. Regarding, negotiating with the railroad, I'm not sure I've ever engaged with any entity. That acts like a railroad. No disparagement to them. They have thousands of communities that they interact with their rail lines crossing. These conversations are like an email every 6 months back and forth to them. So I don't suspect that they're big negotiators unless somebody knows. I don't know if it's Warren Buffett who owns this rail line, but my sense is that it's a take it or leave it. And they have emphasized that there is a adjacent property owner who's very hungry to buy this and that they have been putting them off to wait to hear from us.
Well, from the connectivity standpoint, I think that it's great. And, the fact that Ponderay Bay Trail owns the property that could potentially connect it to Sand Creek. And in addition to all the multifamily that's in this area, there's also a lot of multifamily going on in Ponderay. And if we can give people a non-motorized option to get into Sandpoint, that's one less parking space we have to maintain for them. So I really like this project from that standpoint. The price tag definitely gives me pause, and also the piece about I really don't want to see the Baldyfoot property get sold off either. So it's tough with competing priorities to make a decision like this.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Council President Rule.
is this coming back as an action item at a future meeting?
Ideally.
Okay, so can we work towards wrapping up discussion?
Yes.
If we're going to have it as an action item?
I appreciate the feedback, just really wanting to know everything that we can do to answer your questions and prepare a potential action with any information any of you need. So we did not hear from Councilman. Did we hear from you, Councilman Howarth, on this? I'm sorry, I was taking notes. It gets blurred sometimes. Excellent. Yeah, no action. Thank you, Councilman Welker, unless there's further discussion or comments. But to Council President's point, we want to be expedient in this stuff. Thank you. That will conclude item 8, and then moving on to the next business of new business. Item 4 was approved from consent calendar by Councilman Howarth. Councilman Howarth, the floor is yours, and hopefully we can answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this really brief. As I was reading the information in our packet, I fully understand that we have 2 very old pickups that are serving as the transportation for our department today. I think it was a 1999 F-150 and maybe a 2001, if my memory serves me right. So I fully support acquiring new cars, new pickups. My only question is, why are we buying brand new pickups? We all know that if you buy a year-old or a 2-year-old, there's a lot of depreciation. And I would imagine that an upgrade from 2000 to 2023 or 2024 would still be a huge improvement. So my only question is really, why are we buying or wanting to buy brand new vehicles versus maybe a 2-year-old that's got some depreciation?
I think that's a valid point, Councilman Howarth. I guess, Jason, do you have any comments on that? This is the truck for the Parks crew, is that correct?
Yes, yep. You know, I've been in city government for 10 months now, and I'm not sure what the history is with cities buying new vehicles versus used vehicles. This was, you know, the only reason this is before you tonight is because when this was put in the budget last year, the quote that was provided was for 2 trucks for $72,000. And as we know, vehicle prices have gone up. So maybe Cheryl can speak to this. I don't know what our city, do we have a city policy on purchasing new versus used vehicles? That's
It
a
is
question.
really department decision. I always encourage looking for used, but it's really what the department is requesting. It's not a decision that I would make. Because in police, it's very common that we do purchase used vehicles. There's other, when we do send out quotes, and I can tell you historically though, when we send quotes out for vehicles like new trucks, the dealers we reach out to, which is all the locals, and we usually reach out sometimes down into Coeur d'Alene as well. We really have not had any good used vehicles being brought forward to us for purchase. So historically, in the last few years, we haven't been able to really get a used one. But in this situation, that process that was done was strictly for new. And again, that's just based on department's request.
Mr. Mayor?
Go
if
ahead,
I
Council
may.
President Rule.
If I may add to that, I've been in the new car market recently, done a lot of research over the past COVID years, and I think everybody's aware since COVID, the used car market values are way up, and really to save $2,000 on a vehicle that's going to cost you $30,000 or $40,000 is not worth the effort. So that's been my recent experience, that you just can't buy used cars unless you're going to get something that's 10 years old. And I think for the city, that's probably not an appropriate investment.
And we really, like, honestly, the last few years, we have sent out quotes for new or used. And we usually do 3 model year, 3 years or newer. And we put a maximum mileage on there. That usually gets us, but we don't want a vehicle coming in that has high mileage. But we just have not really had good response from the local dealers on providing us used options to even look at. So that's just been the last few years.
Yeah, if I might comment, I know the used market is tight, but you made an assumption that you might only save $2,000. I think that's an assumption. I would still like the city to go pursue a request from our dealers to say, can we find a 2021, 22, 23? What would the price be? If they come back and say, no, there's those cars, there's nothing available, then I get it. But I think it's behooves us to try and use our city dollars to the best ability that we can. And that's my only concern.
I
Councilman
understand.
Howarth, I really appreciate, I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't even really think of that. I would think about it for my personal life. So I guess my question is, Cheryl, can you bring me up to speed where we're at in this process in terms of how pregnant are we?
So, so,
Yeah.
so, basically, we did the process based on the request of the department. The lowest, priced vehicles was significantly lower was from Pierce Auto. And the trucks, right now, we're in a purchase order. We're not locked into any agreement at this point because it's all dependent upon council approval of that PO.
Mayor, may I say one last thing here? And Rick, I completely understand where you're coming from, but the last week of December, I also was in the new car market and specifically went to Pierce Auto to look at this truck or one of these trucks in question. I've done a lot of searching as well, new and used. I looked at the used lot that they had. There was not a better deal on a new or used vehicle, specifically this 2025, that I have seen since after COVID pricing. And that's what actually brought me in. And I've known the Pierce guys for quite a bit. I would, I would never buy a Dodge, and I actually went and looked at a Dodge for the first time. And I was in the automotive industry for quite some time prior to this, and this vehicle brought me in, and I could not find anything that was cheaper than this that made sense, new or used.
Cheryl, to the bid price, how long is that valid for? Do you know offhand?
Pierce works very well with us, so I don't think that they're, obviously, right now, those particular trucks, they're not even in yet. They're not at the dealer. They haven't arrived. They're in transit, as far as I understand, the last I heard. And so they're really good at our process and holding until our process goes through. But so there's not necessarily a deadline per se, but of course they want to sell vehicles. So they're not going to let it sit there while we go through process.
So if Councilman Howard asked us to table this for 2 weeks for us to at least do some further comparison shopping and looking for used vehicles that would meet the need, that wouldn't invalidate our current opportunity to purchase this at this price?
It could. They might not be if they show up in the lot and we're not ready, then they may or may not hold it. That would be something that I would put Amber on to check. But at this point, they're not even at the lot. I don't know how much longer it'll be. Like one we just ordered from them for the water treatment plant arrived a few days ago. So we're finishing up that process now. These trucks were basically looked at and did a PO about a week behind the water treatment plant request that had come through. Then the parks request came through. So my guess is these will arrive maybe even this week. So
Mr. Mayor?
will they hold it? I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
Cheryl, I
yes.
thought you were finished.
Council President Rule?
I'd like to make a motion to purchase the budgeted vehicles for Community Planning and Development Department, Parks Division.
As represented by PO number 251453.
Correct.
Second.
Motion by Rule, second by Dick, to proceed with the resolution to purchase the budget vehicles, PO 251453. Any discussion? This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Sprow,
Yes.
Counselor Howarth,
No.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Duquette,
Say no also.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, council members. that was the last item on our agenda this evening. I appreciate your time, and with no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:24.
Second.
Motion moved by Shriver, second by Dick, meeting adjourned.